Okay, people. So I had the pleasure of conversating with Jeffrey St. Jules, who has his new film, The Silent Planet, dropping at Fantasia. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time, man. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Awesome. Man, this is just the second sci-fi uh film I've seen so far during the festival. Very different from the first.
What was the first?
Astronauts.
Oh, the
And
short film?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. It was playing in front of a French film.
Mm,
That was really good. Yeah, both were good. Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, but very
Mhm.
different from yours. Very different from
Yes.
your film.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, where did like the idea of the Silent Planet come from? Because I think it's easy to look and just say it's a sci-fi film, but it seems so much more. There's so many layers to the film.
Yeah. Well, I guess it really goes back to when I was a kid. Uh, and I was fascinated with outer space, and I kind of had a fantasy of leaving everything behind and living alone on a planet. It's an odd fantasy, but it sounded good in a way to me at the time. Um, and I just always had this kind of hermit fantasy.
Mm,
I don't think I ever could have really done it. I think I would have been like super lonely, but it was like a fantasy that, like, when things are bad, you could always just go live on your own somewhere. So
yeah.
that sort of developed into this idea of if you were living alone on a planet, you were never going to see people anymore. Could you just shed your whole self of who you were before? Does any of that matter anymore? Will
Mm,
it follow you, or can you just escape it all? Um, and that was kind of the big question that I guess where it all came from. And initially, I just, like, many years ago, I just, in my, sometimes I just have an image and it's just a guy alone on a planet, and I just wrote that down, and then it became this a while later.
ah, that's interesting. Like, I feel growing up, there were more kind of stories of people in solitude. You
Yeah.
know, things like Robinson Crusoe, the Count of Monte Cristo.
Mhm.
Obviously, there was more to it, and other people came into those stories, but there seemed to be more of those. Do you think that has an influence in some way?
On me personally,
Yeah.
I don't know if that does or not. Like, I'm trying to think of any particular films um, about people being alone connected with me, and I can't think of any in particular. Um, but I'm sure it comes from the same place. I mean, the tough thing with making a film with somebody alone is they're alone, and who do they act with? Uh, which is maybe why we don't see as many of them nowadays. Um, but yeah, there's definitely a history of that kind of people having a fascination with, what, how can we withstand loneliness?
Mm, yeah. Now, watching it, like, I thought it was interesting because we have Niyya, um, who's raised by these other people. So
Really.
it kind of seems like there's this thing about that connective the connectivity with people isn't defined by a certain thing,
Hmm.
you know? And then you have like the loneliness, the isolation, and then how you cope with that, right? Like how you use that time to explore who you are, or are you ruminating on what was? And I
Hmm.
thought those two things were very interesting. Like, are those narratives in the film that you were looking to explore?
Yeah, like I thought of her journey very much as like, so she's a human who was raised by these aliens who had come to Earth, um, and the way I discussed it with Briana, the actor, was that she just had a hatred for humanity because of what they've done to her family, but also their human weakness. That we have a weakness that we are unable to be alone, and she sees that as a weakness. So when she first goes to this planet, she's a prisoner, obviously, but she's looking forward to escaping humanity.
Yeah.
Being by herself is what she thinks she wants. But as the reality of that starts to take hold, she's faced with living with herself, and she doesn't like herself very much. So I think when Theodore keeps pressing her to hang out, basically, she finds herself, much to her better, what she thought she would be like, wanting that companionship. But ultimately I see it as, she has to kind of accept herself. He has to face himself. So really that's what, two people are kind of running away from themselves, being forcing each other to face themselves, basically.
Yeah, it's very gripping. Like, it grips you.
Okay.
It's so intriguing watching this and seeing how these two kind of stories interconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Because we open up with Niyya, and then we kind of jump forward, and you're just like, well, the thing I saw, how does that connect with? And then you just see how it all unfolds and ties in, which was, yeah, like fascinating. Like, how long did it take to get to this story, to kind of go from the idea of solitude and then creating these different stories?
I guess I started working on it. Oftentimes, like when I was finishing my last film, Cinema of Sleep, but like right at the end of the edit, I often get this kind of big burst of creativity about to do what's going to be the next thing. So that would have been like beginning of 2020, I guess, when I started writing it. It wasn't a crazy, like, difficult script to write. It kind of, sometimes I struggle with a script, but this one it sort of came out fairly quickly, and then like the first draft at least, and then kind of went through rewrites. So it was a few years from there to sort of getting it made, but a lot of that time is trying to get the money to make it. Yeah.
Okay. Like, what for you was the hardest part of this story to kind of coalesce, right? To get right?
Yeah. I think it was sort of blending the two characters. So it's a two-hander with two characters, but I wanted to tell both of their stories, and I wanted to feel, I didn't want to sort of favor oneness, so sort of getting that to work where you're balancing both characters and sort of going back and forth, and trying to get the audience to invest in both was the most challenging. Even into the edit, we had a lot more kind of repeating scenes where you'd see something from Theodore's perspective, then see the same thing from Niyya's perspective. But in the edit, it was like, we needed some of that, but then it was like, it would get too tedious to keep seeing them over and over again. So we had trimming some stuff. So sort of getting that balance right between the two characters and making sure that we're not shortchanging either one of them.
Okay. Yeah, no, it did feel like it was right, that you did get that insight into both people.
Mm-hmm.
And I did like seeing the book situation from the two different perspectives.
Mm.
I thought that was interesting,
Okay.
and I think that moment is kind of pivotal in that relationship. So I think it was really good to see it from those different points of view, how it drives each character to do, to go forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of was an important one. Some of the other things we had from different perspective weren't as important, but yeah, that kind of introduces a mystery of her character on his end, and then we go into her world to explore what that mystery is. Like, why does she write in this language? Why is she? Who is she?
Mm. The language thing is interesting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think a lot of times with this kind of stuff, you just find that everyone can speak English.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like we don't, or you might hear something, but you don't see something.
Mm-hmm.
So you created this new language. Like, what was involved with that?
Yeah, like you don't have it doesn't play that often. There's only a few sort of flashback scenes where you hear the alien language.
Mm.
Um, I was inspired a lot by like whale music.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
I just wanted it to have a very kind of vowely sound to it. Um, I see these aliens as they have a certain sense of calm to them, peace to them that we don't have. But then also, I wanted to feel something very alien as well, like something that didn't exactly kind of match our way of speaking. More like you communicate your feeling through the pitch and through the rather than the specific um, sounds of the
Mm.
word. I'm not using the right word, but the specific letter. It's more of like it's like that what pitch are you kind of
Yeah,
thing expressing
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
um,
it's like when the minute you said whale, it was just like, oh my gosh, yes. There's
yeah.
I thought of like the throat singing in June. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
and certainly, yeah, I listened to some of that, like Inuit throat singing, as well as a kind of inspiration too. Yeah.
Mm. But yeah, no, that kind of thing is always fascinating because I remember when I remember reading about Tolkien
Mhm.
and the language was really interesting to him. So he kind of a part of Lord of the Rings came from his love of language and then wanting to create this elfin language, which is fascinating. And then I think watching Villeneuve's Arrival
Yeah.
and the way he created language using maths, and I was just like, oh, I've never seen that. Is incredible. I've never seen that before. So
Yeah.
it's
No,
all
I love that. I love what he does in Arrival with that.
mm,
I didn't create a whole language. That would have been crazy. For I thought of it. I was like, oh, like Tolkien and all these people, they create these whole languages. Like, but I just have like 2 scenes with these aliens. I'm not going to create a whole language. But get a feel of what it would be, uh, and go from there. Maybe if
oh,
I do have more films in this universe, I'll have to create the actual language.
way to burst a bubble, Jeff. Damn it.
I'm supposed to keep that mysterious. Like, no, no, no. I built a whole, yeah, I got the whole
Yeah,
dictionary.
exactly. Don't tell people that. Be like, no, I've got tomes. I've got tomes full of this language.
I thought a lot about how I wanted it to feel and sound and communicate, but in terms of specific things, yeah, it didn't seem like a wise way to spend my prep time.
And where did the look of it come from? Like the written version?
Yeah, so that came from, our production designer and graphic artist came up with that. We just kind of bounced around a bunch of ideas, had some books of old text, and just kind of they would bring ideas. And this one, it just felt like the language to me. It felt like a way of expressing something in like a block rather than, a line.
Yeah.
Which I guess obviously, is somewhat similar to, Korean or Chinese, but that wasn't the intention. Yeah, it just felt right. But yeah, that's all our graphic artist and our production design kind of came up with all that.
Yeah, no, I love that attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember listening to oh my god, what's his name? I think it's like J. Michael Straninsky. He created Babylon 5.
Okay.
And he was talking about there's loads of different alien races, and he was always frustrated with Star Trek, where all they do is put like a ridge, like you put a few lines on your forehead, and hey, new race. And so he really wanted to create new races, create different languages, and all of this kind of thing, which I think it really does add something to a story, where everything isn't just, English and human and just what we know.
Yeah.
So how important to you is that kind of aspect of a story,
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to feel like a bit unexpected and different. Like that was funny you say that about the bridges and stuff, because when we were trying to figure out what these aliens would look like, we didn't have a big budget, so it wasn't like we could do something, create something in CG or do a major overhaul to a person. It would be like, yeah, if we can do like ridges. So it was like, I just really don't want to have like just a humanoid figure with a little bit of prosthetics on their face. It just feels like ugh. So I wanted something that felt a little retro and a little lo-fi, because that's kind of stuff I like. And also like mysterious. So I just did a little, rough sketch of this kind of blobby figure with a mask thing in the eyes, and I gave it to our costume designer, and we just had a lot of discussions around, so it's we wanted there to be kind of a mystery around, is this like the alien's body, or is it like a outfit they're wearing and there's a body underneath? So we wanted that kind of mystery to it. And yeah, just having like a human face with the few, prosthetics on it just felt very boring to me, or like, just been done too many times, basically.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, there was again in this show Babylon 5, there was this race. I think they were called the Vorlons. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And they were in these big kind of suits. But inside the suit was the real version of the alien. And I think it said something like, if you actually saw them in their true essence, it would just like blow your mind. It'd be too much to comprehend.
Yeah, that's great, because it creates a real mystery.
Yeah, I think I don't believe we actually saw them, but there was a few moments throughout the series where you kind of got a little kind of glimpse, but you never really got the full understanding, the full magnitude of what
I love that. Yeah, because then you can't show it, because whatever you show will be disappointing.
Yes,
it's better to keep it off, like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's always really interesting. Like it's just that not knowing and having to kind of piece it together in your mind, you know.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that's always interesting about sci-fi is I find it's kind of, it goes as far as the person's imagination. You know what I mean? It's just like if someone can think of a crazy shape for a vehicle, that's what we get. Otherwise, it might just look like a car, right? with,
Yeah.
with a wing on
That's
or
true.
something
Yeah.
like that.
It's true. I like the way you put that.
Yeah. So when you're creating all of this, what kind of goes through your mind with the look, the feel, the design, right? Are you going, okay, so we're, this many years in the future, so we should push it this far? Or it's just like, well, we're just dealing with this kind of thing, so we don't have to do that, and we'll just kind of change it slightly. What's the fall?
Yeah, so you'll notice in the film, I never say the year, and it's deliberate because I don't want to go. I didn't want to go down that road of, setting up world in the way that was like, this is the world. This is exactly how far it is. Like, this is attached to that. Like, I didn't want to go down this road of people starting to think of all the logistical aspects of it.
Right. Yeah.
I had my mind, and in my crew and everything, we know how far it is in the future, but I didn't want to. I didn't want that communicated, because I just wanted a kind of freedom around it, where it wasn't like, because I think once you go down this road of, in your mind, of logic, connecting things, it's inevitably going to fall apart somewhere. And I just rather that. And what I really liked, I think, when Elias talked about the like the character, he kind of had this theory, I guess, that it was all a dream, and he kind of died when he this is not the thing. It's just like, it's all a dream. I wanted this feeling like, it's real, we're here, but is it all real? Is it some kind of purgatory? Is it some kind of so I guess what I'm getting at is sort of more that interpretation of it as something psychological, rather than like cold hard reality of the future. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for me, the look of it works because it's a kind of a penal colony, really. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be harsh. It's gonna be barren.
Yeah.
Right. So all of that kind of works, but then it also works on the level of being in your mind. Right. So the emptiness of like these parameters, you know what I mean, being sent to a planet on your own, so you have no one else to talk to, so it would kind of, in your head, I guess it would feel like a desert, like this open, barren wilderness, maybe mountains that you think, I'm never going to get to the top of that, right? That's the kind of vision that kind of jumped to my head. And so it's just like you're watching it and you're like, oh yeah, no, this, yeah.
And that's that's kind of it, right? I did want to very much feel like, I wanted to shoot it on location. That was very important, because I just wanted to feel something tactile there. And, again, like, on our budget level, you try to create this all on in CG space, or like a LED wall or something. It's just not gonna, like, there's stuff they can do in Dune that's like, it's so beautiful, and But we don't have the ability to do that. And even they shot a location too,
Yeah.
part of it. So yeah, just feeling that space there and feeling like, you are millions of light years from home alone on this place, and you want to feel like you're really there. But then it starts to play tricks on your mind.
Yeah. When you were looking for a location, what was important to you?
So it had to feel dramatic, empty, kind of lonely. But I see like a certain coziness to it as well. Like, especially when he's got his little habitat tucked amongst these hills. And he's like in his bed journaling, and outside is like this place. So it's really like and something that had a landscape that didn't feel so familiar. It wasn't just like, oh, that's the desert in Arizona or something.
Yeah.
And to people in Newfoundland, they will be like, oh, that's the tablelands at Gross Mourne. But to the rest of the world, nobody knows. So the place we shot in is a lot of the big orangey scenery stuff. That's a place called the Tablelands, which is one of only 2 places in the world where the Earth's mantle is exposed.
Oh.
So it's like it all kind of, I don't know, somehow cracked open, and it's all this Earth's mantle, this really interesting, unique rock. That's not, it looks like desert, but it's not desert. It doesn't grow stuff because it's like toxic to plants.
Right.
So it's just a super unique landscape. And, something that I don't think anybody's ever used to shoot a sci-fi film before. Yeah, and then there's a few other places that are like, around Newfoundland, where it's kind of like the big cliffs by the water, and where his habitat will actually be shot in a big kind of open pit mine. But yeah, looking for places without trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting, because like, if this land, nothing can grow because of it, the soil's toxic, right? And then if you think about it, like, we can't grow if we keep toxicity within us.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Like, was that something you were thinking about?
No, not at all, but that's great. I guess you could say that for our planet, it's the same thing, but this specific place in the world, like, it's actually toxic. But yeah, no, I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they're keeping their toxicity inside or hiding from it, and not facing it or what have you.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, because I guess there's so many different landscapes you could have gone for, like snow, ice, as you say, desert, like all that kind of thing. Like, did you toy with any other kind of look, or was this automatically, you just thought, oh, this would be a perfect place to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of we had to shoot in Canada for our funding reasons. When I was first conceiving it, I was looking at like Canary Islands, where they shot that movie Enemy Mine. I don't know if you remember that old sci-fi movie. It was like a two-hander about an alien, and it was Dennis Quaid.
Oh, yeah, I think.
Sorry, no, was it called Enemy Mine?
I know. I remember Dennis Quaid thing.
Yeah, I think I might be mixing up the names. But anyway, so I thought about there, but that, and it was like, oh, maybe we can do a co-production. But we sort of landed that it was going to be a Canadian production. So I was looking at the different Canadian provinces and thinking about where we could shoot. And there's a few, like where I live in Ontario, there's not much. that's very interesting. So we could have gone to like mountains, and but when I sort of started looking at Newfoundland, it felt like the most dramatic landscape that is not like that everybody doesn't know about. Because a lot of places you go and everybody just like, oh, that's that place.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But Newfoundland's great that way. Like you just this is doing like a tourism ad for Newfoundland, but you just go to like some beach and there's nobody there, and it's the most beautiful beach you've ever seen, with big cliffs and stuff. Where if there was anywhere else, that would be like the biggest tourist attraction. But there's all these places because it's so remote. But yeah, once I sort of landed on and started looking at all the places in Newfoundland, it's very clear that that's where he had to shoot. And it's also good for filmmaking. It's very filmmaker friendly there.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, how long was the shoot for?
It was short. It was 18 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the most challenging part of that?
Oh, everything. Just time. Like just really frustrating. You getting what you need, but then not having time to play around as much as I would have liked. That's a challenge. Like the challenge is time. It always is. I think probably even if you have many more days to shoot, but I would have loved to have more time. Like we got what we needed. We got and we got like great performances and everything, I think. So we got it, but it would have been lovely to explore a bit more.
Yeah. I get that. And yeah, the performances were great. Like, what was that casting like?
Well, we talked about a lot of different ideas for Theodore and kind of landed on Elias, and he is Canadian, and we're a Canadian film, which helps us a bit. But really, it was just it just was so perfect when his name came up, because he's just got so much pathos in his face. You just feel for him, and it feels like he's lived a life, and there's just something so empathetic about him. And so we're lucky, we offered it to him, and he wanted to do it, and he really, really took it to heart. Like I was like, whoa, he really cared about this character, and I felt so lucky to have that. And he's like very hard on himself, so he put a lot into it. And then with Briana, like I wasn't familiar with her before. Her name kind of came up in the casting, and I watched her movies that she had done, which had only been 2 at the time. And she's just such a like just subtle little gestures and things she did, and so precise. So we just had a meeting over Zoom, and we talked until she got the part. Not got the part, isn't got the part. Like she understood the character and connected with it, so it felt right. And she was the most like I couldn't believe it was she had only done 2 movies before, because like every take was spot on. Every note you give her, she just adjusts to perfectly, just so confident in everything. So I felt very lucky that I had these 2 people, and both really nice people. Like there's no ego, no drama. So for a movie where it's just 2 people, and it was great that we had that kind of. You never know when you're casting people, like you don't know what they're, they might be a great actor. You don't know what how they're gonna be to work with. But
yes,
yeah,
for sure. I mean, is there any hesitation of using an actor when they don't have a load of credits to their name?
Not if I feel like you have an instinct, you know, and plus, you know, like, not really, not if you can see the work they've done and see that they're good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just asked because I think a lot of people wonder about things, you know what I mean? Because it's always just like, I don't have as enough experience as that other person, so do I even stand a chance with this? You know,
Yeah.
so it's always good to get that insight from a director who,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, it looks at so many different actors to what they actually gravitate to, you know?
Yeah. Well, also with Brand, like, you know, the movie she did do, she was, you know, George Clooney directed the movie for Cinderbar, and then when you watch like interviews with the other actors she's worked with, like Ben Affleck and Sebastian Stan, they all praise her so much. So I kind of felt, oh, there's a little, if they think she's great, then I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. And when you wrote these characters, was there a look, or, you know, was it more just, I'm just going to talk to people and whoever seems right will play the role? Like, was there an age to Theodore, or, you know, Niyya, Niyya,
Yeah. She could
yeah,
Niyya.
Niyya, boy.
I mean, not a specific look. I don't, you know, I think I like to keep open to that. And but yeah, the age, definitely Theodore was always meant to be older. And Niyya was always meant to be younger. Um, but beyond that, not really any specific look that we felt was like a must have.
Okay. Now, once you had them both locked in,
Mhm.
were there, like, how did you kind of convey the emotion, the sentiment of their characters? Did you give them like certain reference points, you know, or music to be like, I feel this would be, this kind of will put you in the frame of mind for this person, or watch this scene, watch this character, watch this film?
I mean, a lot of it is just conversations about who these characters are, what they want, where they come from. Uh, for Brianna's character, it didn't end up in the movie, but she plays piano. She's like a piano, you know, prodigy. Like,
Yeah.
so we had a big scene where she was playing piano, but just didn't end up working for the entire story, so we cut it. And the only music I listened to in preparation for it was Rachmaninoff, which there's some Rachmaninoff in the movie. So yeah, that's what I gave to Brianna for that. And then yeah, like at the end of the year last year in 2024, she wrote to me and said, "Oh, you'll find it funny to hear this, but my top Spotify Wrapped artist of the year was Rachmaninoff." But yeah, that was the main reference for her character in terms of like music to give, and that was a big one.
Okay.
But mostly, yeah, it was just mostly we just talked and had conversations. We did rehearse. I would have, you know, as much as we could fit into our prep schedule, just kind of, you know, working through some scenes, feeling it out, getting comfortable. Especially like on a really short shoot, I find it super helpful to be able to do that before you get out there.
Yeah,
Just
that
like,
makes sense.
you know, otherwise I like to play, give a little space to try things. And when you're on an 18-day shoot, you don't really have time to do that during the shoot.
Okay. Now, a lot of times, you know, with characters and, you know, the actors, people like to encourage them to, you know, get together, have conversations, go for dinner to build a chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
But with this film, because there's that kind of hesitance, right? That isolation they're dealing with. And so it's not really you know what I mean? Hey, buddy, how you doing? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
They don't come into it knowing each other and being comfortable with
yeah, yeah. So do you want to kind of keep them apart as long as possible?
I didn't do that. I mean, we didn't like, go out every night, or, we had a couple dinners, and I think it's more important for actors to trust each other and feel safe with each other than it is necessarily, like, they're good at what they do. They can, I don't think I have to keep them separate for them to have that sense of distance from each other. I think it's important that they chat with each other and trust each other, because really, they're in that scene together. They need to have that trust that the scene partner is in it with them.
Yeah. Okay. With the I think it was Jenny, right?
Janie?
The Jamie, yes,
You
yeah.
know, just if actors wanted to, if they felt like, oh, I got to keep myself separate, then I would totally respect that. But I'm not going to impose it on them. But yeah, Janie,
yeah. Like, when casting that, like, what was that kind of for? Was it, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I need a certain type of voice, a male, a female. Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, that one we cast, way deep into the, like, we were in our sound design phase at that point. Like,
Okay.
we didn't have the actor cast, so we kind of had a lot of time. It started off, on the set, we just have our continuity person was reading out Janie, and she did a great job, and it sort of set a bit of a tone for it. And my editor Tiffany did some Janie voice, which was also great during the. So all these kind of things, we just wanted to have. Janie was supposed to feel like a friend in a way, so yeah.
I don't know, bit of a shitty friend.
Yeah, not actually be a friend, but in that kind of way that
yeah
trying to be nice even when you're
I know. Yeah.
A fake friend.
Yeah. I mean, imagine calling up your friend
Friend
and
who's
being
hired to be your friend.
yeah. Oh, I think our conversation time is over.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
Oh man. How much did it actually come together in the editing room? You know?
Well, a lot came together in the editing room. I mean, the film is not too far off from the script, except that there's a lot less of it. So we shaved, we did move stuff around. We shifted scenes. I think it's important to be real brutal at times in the editing room, and it's not working for the story, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Try not to be too precious about things, because it's got to all build to something in the end. So yeah, there was a lot of tweaks in the edit, but the main story, nothing shifted in the main story and what happens at the beginning, middle, and end. Just kind of shaving off some, and then I discovered I'd never done like sci-fi, this type of sci-fi. There's a lot of figuring out how much information do people need to understand the world?
Yeah.
There were versions where it was less clear about the aliens, and then people weren't getting, like, I want to just have just enough information that people would understand it, but not so much that it feels like it gets bogged down in it. But there were versions of the script that were too sparse, and people, in a rough cut, where people weren't necessarily getting all the information we needed them to have to get into the story. So there's like sort of finding that balance was interesting.
Okay. I mean, did it always start with the young Niyya and her mum?
It always started with the way it starts with Niyya and kind of her girlfriend and being betrayed. During the cut, that scene came back in. I think it's ultimately important to have it to start. It always started that way. But yeah, other things shifted the order of during the film, but
Okay. Now, what, like, there's a couple of things I thought was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, like the rocks, like I think the look of the rocks was great with the luminousness bit on them and all of that. But then what they do with the rocks, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I really like that. And then the habitats, right? And then when we see it come, and then the top of it is the thing that goes off, and it's like, oh, that seems really efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That seems like a really efficient way of doing, because I think when you kind of follow like NASA and SpaceX and the ideas of exploring other planets, is always, how do we get this there, right? What would you do with the leftover and just all of that? So the way you did that, I thought was like great. Like, where did those two ideas for like, well, three ideas for the rocks, for the transportation of the rocks, and then the habitat situation, where did those come from?
Oh gosh, I can't remember specifically where they came from. The just sort of came in the writing. I wanted to be a little bit fun, like what there's kind of a, I guess, Sisyphean kind of thing where it's just shooting a rock up, doesn't know why. We don't know why. At one point I had a thing. I was going to have a thing at the end that kind of explained it, but I took it out. And just this, like I didn't want to ever explain why they're, why these rocks and everything. But I just like that. Day to day, I'm mining a rock, shooting it off, the purpose of which I have no idea, and that's just what I have to do every day, my routine. And the ships, I kind of, I wanted to have it feel like a flying saucer type of old school little. I was meaning to be a little playful with it. And it just seemed like you said, like a convenient way to drop a little pod with the ship and and then have the thing fly back to the main station, pick up another prisoner, take them to another planet.
Yeah, no, I liked the feel of it, right? And yeah, the way that we don't know everything. There are a lot of questions, but what we do know is enough to understand these characters and their motivations and how they're navigating this situation together.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I hope. Because it's I really wanted to just be about the characters and their journey more than anything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is your third feature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what was that like? Like, had this whole thing become easier? No, like, because you've got two under the belt. Like, is it still kind of that new craziness of because you're playing in a different genre?
Yeah. I mean, it certainly some things get easier when you've done it before. You feel a little more comfortable. You don't feel like everything, having to prove yourself with everything. But yeah, there's also a challenge. Like I kind of have this feeling like when I make a film, I want it to be something I haven't done before in some way, because I
Right.
think an important thing about filmmaking is having some naivete. I feel like almost like if you become too much of a master at something, then you just know too. Like I feel like there's something in coming to a project and discovering it and discovering things, and
Mm.
that is really good. So I like that. I like having a new playground to play um, in each one. There's common themes and common stylistic things that come up, uh, but yeah, I like doing a new thing for each movie in some way, like something I haven't done before, something I'm an amateur at, I guess.
Right. Okay. And okay, so was this the sci-fi film you hoped it would be then, with that in mind?
Yeah, it's what I was aiming to make. Like I wasn't thinking in terms of like I'm gonna make a, a great sci-fi film so much as I want to make this film about these characters in this place. um and yeah, so yeah, it turned out how I kind of imagined it. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now, I mean, the question is this, Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's a toxic planet, there does seem to be a lot of fertile soil here
But just
to.
to be clear, the place where we shot is toxic.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the planet is actually toxic.
Okay. But yeah, no, there does feel like there's, you know, a lot of room to potentially grow, further stories. Have
Hmm.
you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wonder who's gonna come next once they think Niyya is dead. Oh shit,
Mm.
that was a big spoiler. Uh, just put that in front of the whole video, I guess. Um, uh, but yeah, there's some. I also, part of me wants to know more about the Oeans back on Earth.
Mm. Yeah, because you think, all right, we could definitely tell more stories on this planet, but we could tell stories from the aliens' point of view, the humans' point of view, like, the ruling power on Earth, why they're doing this.
Yeah,
There's so many different, threads that could get pulled.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
because it's a very small piece of this whole world. So
yeah.
yeah, there's definitely some other things I'd like to explore in it if I ever had the chance.
Okay. So do you know what might be next?
For me, or
Yeah.
film, or for this world.
No, but like for you moving forward.
Oh, in terms of films.
Yeah. Well, whatever project film, TV, back to shorts, like.
Yeah. I got a few of like a kind of folk horror set in PEI where my family's from. Sort of loosely inspired by family history.
Okay.
And I have kind of a 90s set, kind of, I guess you could call it a sci-fi love story. Yeah, so I'm hoping one of those would be the next one, but we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. The Silent Planet is having its world premiere at Fantasia. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, how does that feel? Right, you're leading up to, you know, launching this out into the world. Like, yeah. What are the feelings right now?
Yeah, I mean, excited. I don't know. It's, you never know how the world will feel about, or people will feel about what you make. I think is, I feel like I like what I made, so hopefully people resonates with people. It's been a long time. My last film kind of had its festival release during the pandemic, so
Mm,
there weren't really any screenings. It was all online, and um, yeah, I think our premiere was like a drive-in in Santa Barbara,
right.
and I wasn't able to be there because I don't think I could leave the country. I don't remember at that point. Um, so I'm just really excited to see a movie with an audience again. That's really what I'm most excited about. And from what I've seen at the screening so far, the audiences are really great here. So it'll be a positive experience.
Yeah. No, hopefully, man. I mean, I'm sure it will be. You know, it's a great film. You know, like, will you be doing a Q&A afterwards?
Yeah, there'll be a Q&A. Yeah.
Oh, superb.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always fun. It's always fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, that's great, man. How can people keep track of the film? Because have you got distribution in place?
Yeah. Our distributor is Quiver. They're called Quiver. Um, so we don't have like a release date yet. Uh, so there's no particular place I can send people except to say, keep track of it, remember it.
Do you
Um,
have a website, social media for the film?
I don't believe so. I'm very bad at that myself. Uh, so I still only have a Facebook account. Uh, yeah, I should. I guess you get them to set something up so I can send people somewhere.
Yeah, just even if it's just a you know, a holding page that
Yeah,
it
yeah,
has like
something that will.
technical information on and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
There's yeah, you've got 2 screenings at Fantasia as well, which is really great. Because
mhm.
sometimes films only get 1. So, you know, you've got Wednesday the 24th and Friday the 26th, which you must feel a bit chuffed about.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Jeffrey, man, I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was
Yeah,
fun. Good conversation.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it. It's just been fascinating, you know, just hearing like the background of this because, yeah, no, it was a really intriguing film. You
Mhm.
know, as I said, there just seems all these different layers there. It's not just a sci-fi film. There's this exploration of self,
Yeah.
you know, grief, you know, our history, our past, just
Mhm.
all of these different things, you know, which I think when you look at the world today, there's so many things in this film which, you know what I mean, I think are very poignant to that. So yeah, great work, my friend. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, man. Hopefully, when your next project is ready, you'll stop by and we can have another conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Excuse me.
No worries at all, man. Well, again, thank you for your time and have a tremendous premiere I'm sure it's gonna be a really good reception.
I hope so. Thanks so much, Kevin.
No worries, man. You take it easy.
All right. Bye.
Okay.